Buenas noches, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the last review that we have for the semester. Remember that your exam will be available only on Thursday this week. So make sure that you set up a time on Thursday to complete the final exam. The exam must be completed on that date. Also remember that you have assignments due this week, including chapter 10 homework and also my favorite molecule project. Make sure that you hand those in because the semester actually ends on Friday. But again, make sure that on Thursday you have availability to complete the final exam, which will be available on Canvas. So for today, we are going to be reviewing some of the concepts that are going to be coming in the exam via a Kahoot quiz. And everybody that is in class is ready. I love all the different characters that you guys have selected. Very festive. Love it. Okay, let's get started reviewing for the final. Great. So make sure that you check out on the specifically the study guide, all of the names and symbols for the elements that we learned throughout the semester. Let's continue. Great, let's continue. Excellent. So in order to do this, because I want to make sure that everybody knows how to do this, we needed to multiply that 5.0 times 0.473 liters. in order to do the conversion. Any questions on clinical problems? You must know how to do that calculation. That is very important, especially if you're a nursing student.
Quick question. So,
Yes.
how did you do it? I couldn't remember. Was it 50 over 75 and then 100 over 1 and then you cancel out?
So let's go piece by piece. Let me.
Okay, thank you.
So it's easier. Let me just take the
Okay.
notes of the information that is here. So at least you guys see it worked out, because it's easier. Like I can talk about it, but when it comes to numbers, it's easier to actually see it written.
Definitely, thank you.
No problem. Okay, so in the following problem, the pieces of information that is given to us is that our patient is 75 pounds, that we need to dose this person specifically at 50 milligrams of the medication per 1 kilogram of their weight. And lastly, we have the clinical factor, which is what is the medicine that we have in hand that specifically is 100 milligrams per milliliter. Now, taking that into consideration, the first thing that we need to do is making sure that the weight of the patient that is in pounds, we need to convert it to kilogram. And to do that conversion, we need to do 2.20 pounds over 1 kilogram. Now that you have the body weight of the patient in kilograms, then the next step is to use specifically the dosage. So how much medicine do I need to administer to the patient? So for every kilogram, you have to do 50 milligrams. And then the last piece of the puzzle is going to be like, well, that medication specifically, I have 100 milligrams per milliliter. We can use directly the clinical factor because the units of the dosage and the clinical factor match. Since they're both in milligram, then we can proceed. So we have 100 milligrams per milliliter. And then when we get that, we have to do 75 times 50 divided by 2.20 times 100. We will see that our calculator display is 17.04545, etc. But because the question asks us to express it as 1 sig fig, when we take this value and round it to one significant figure, that's where we get 20 milliliters. Put a 1 in the chat. I'm gonna leave this here for a few moments. Put a 1 in the chat if now it makes more sense, this problem. Great. Make sure that you take an image before I remove it. Okay. Let's go back to the quiz. Put a 2 in the chat if you can see, again, the Kahoot. I just want to make sure that we're looking at the same screen. Okay, good. The Kahoot is back. Okay, let's move on to the next question. Remember that mixing salt and water is not a chemical change because they can be separated by physical methods. Let's continue. Excellent. So the main thing when you're finding the neutrons, remember to round to a whole number the atomic mass. That's the main recommendation I will have for this one. So remember that when it comes to food labels, the fat provides 9 nutritional calories of energy. Carbohydrates and protein provide 9 kilocalories or nutritional calories of energy. Excellent job, you guys. helium is the only element that its group number does not match its valence electrons, okay? It's an exception to the rule. Great job. So remember, carbon is going to contribute 8 because each carbon atom contributes 4, but there's a subscript of 2. Hydrogen contributes 1, that's 9, plus chlorine contributes 7, that's where the 16 comes from. Make sure that you practice going from name to chemical formula to name. Great job. I believe that you guys will be doing very well in the exam. So far, so good. Let's continue. Remember that to find molecules, or in the case of elements, atoms, if you're given moles, all you have to do is multiply by Avogadro's number. When it comes to a question like this, remember that it is important that you can go from name to chemical formula, because you need to be able to calculate the molar mass. Because in this question, once you have the molar mass, you're going to take 175 divided by the molar mass to find the number of moles. Okay, so this one is the conversion from atoms all the way to grams. So in order to do this, if you're given atoms, we're going to divide by Avogadro's number. Then once you get that result, you're going to multiply by the molar mass of the element. And that's how we do a problem like this. Remember that when it comes to electron groups, a lone pair is one electron group, a single bond, a double bond, or a triple bond. They all count as one. So for this molecule, sulfur difluoride, the Lewis structure looks like the sulfur is in the middle. The fluorines are next to it, and they each have 6 lone pairs. And the sulfur also has 2 lone pairs. So the 2 lone pairs and the 2 bonds to the fluorines, that's 4 electron groups. But because we have molecular shape in the question, molecular shape means that we need to look at bonded atoms versus looking at lone pairs. So that's why the answer is bent and not tetrahedral. Great job. Halfway through, we're on question 20. So for this molecule, longest carbon chain is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 carbons in length. We have to start from the right because even though this is an equidistant, meaning that they're both on 3 and 5 because chlorine comes first alphabetically. That's why we start on the right. Make sure that you review naming organic molecules, specifically the ones that I highlighted and we did in chapter 4. Great job. Let's do one more practice problem on identifying a particular reaction. Remember that if it says ketone, it is going to have a keto prefix, okay? And then 4 carbons is tetros, not pentos. When it comes to attractive forces, this is something that is particularly important, that you know how to determine the overall polarity in a molecule. And in this molecule, this is a polar molecule, but because my hydrogen atom is not bonded directly to fluorine, that's why it cannot hydrogen bond. So keep that in mind. Please make sure that you review how different lipids look structurally. So it is important that you review those slides. So when it comes to this question, let me just mention where you guys are going to find this information. So from chapter 7, this information is specifically on slide 14, where we have the different structures for lipids. And as we were progressing in that chapter, we mentioned a few of the bonds that are there. So make sure that you review that. To find the fatty acids, given this structure, you need to look at slide 15 and 16 in chapter 7 notes. That's where we have the structures. And I mentioned to you guys that out of there is some information that, that is required for the exam. So make sure that you check that out. again, this information is from slide 15 and 16 from chapter 7 material. We are only 10 questions left after this one. This is material from the last exam. And in the last exam, we learned how we have to break the different reactants into ions and then exchange the ions. Now, because this is Pb plus 2, that's why the correct answer is PbCl2. So for this problem specifically, because we were given grams of our solute, we needed to change it into moles and then divide it by the volume given. So remember, for this exam, you need to know how to do the conversion from grams to moles. And molarity is always moles over liters. So remember that fact. So make sure that you review how to name acids. This is an oxyacid that is produced from the polyatomic acid hypochlorite. So when it comes to the chemical formula, understand that this, we're just changing the ending "ite" for ose acid. The chemical formula for hydrosulfuric acid is H2S. So its conjugate base, as you can see, is the answer in red. Remember that hydrosulfuric acid is not the same thing as sulfuric acid. So remember those distinctions. Remember that to make a buffer, we need a weak acid and the salt of its conjugate base. In here, the answers in blue and in green, specifically, they had strong acids. So remember that there are 6 strong acids that you need to be familiar with in order to answer a question like this. If we have the concentration of OH, remember that there are 2 equations that you need to perform. Specifically, you need to find the concentration of H plus and then use the pH equation to find that. This is a concept that we explored in the last exam. Make sure that you practice pH calculations. It is important that for the final exam, you have a sheet or a reference table with the structures for the amino acids. make sure that you practice chapter 10 homework before the exam on Thursday, because some of these questions, it's easier to practice in the chapter quiz than to do it in the exam itself. The amino acid in red, that is proline. The amino acid in blue, that is glycine. And those have nonpolar side chains. Specifically, you can also find this information in slide 2 from chapter 10 material. So when it comes to peptides, and we're trying to determine the amino acids that are present, remember that whenever we see these structures, we always have an NH3 in the beginning. Immediately after that NH3, there's going to be an alpha carbon, and we're going to have a side chain. And this side chain, this is cysteine. Then we should specify that we're going to have amide bonds. And after each amide bond, we have an alpha carbon. So overall, when we look at this structure, we can identify that we have 1 amino acids, 2 amino acids, 3 amino acids, 4 amino acids, and lastly, 5 amino acids. And that's how we identify how to determine the 1-letter code given the structure for the amino acid. Let's do one more practice problem when it comes to this. Any questions when it comes to peptides and determine their 1-letter codes? Because I can see that the 2 students that answer get this. If this concept is hard for you, make sure that you review the notes, that you look at the lecture videos, and more importantly, that you try the chapter quiz. Because there's about 3 problems or 4 problems in chapter 10 quiz that deals with this type of question. 2 more questions to go. when it comes to the concept of inhibitors, please review, let me tell you exactly which slide. On chapter 10, all of this information is summarized in slide 23. So make sure that you have that specifically for the final. And last question. So again, when it comes to inhibitors, this is information that is on slide 23 for the chapter 10 quiz, okay? So this concludes specifically our Kahoot quiz. Are there any specific questions that students would like to ask in the last 10 minutes that we have today? Go ahead, Daisy.
Hi. So for our exam on Thursday, is that gonna be like released like all day or only like for like our class time?
It's going to be released all day. So from midnight to 11:59, but only on Thursday.
Okay. And then how many questions did you say that was?
That exam, give me a moment. Let me look at my notes. That exam has 40 items. Because I always call them items because sometimes you can have like, you know, true or false or matching and all that kind of stuff. So 40 items.
Okay, thank you so much.
No problem. Any other questions?
I know we recently did this, but can you just remind me what chapter or lesson the conjugate basis was?
No problem. So specifically, that's chapter 9.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
No problem. Any other questions? Okay, since there are no other questions, thank you guys so much for coming today. I really appreciate all the hard work that you guys have put into this class during the semester. It has been my pleasure to serve as your professor for Chemistry 112. I wish you good luck in the final exam and any other finals that you guys have going on. Also, have a great break and have a good night, you guys. Thank you so much. Remember, there's no meeting on Thursday or office hours. You just go ahead and you take your exam. You're welcome. Thank you guys for coming.